Hello, 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 everybody, and welcome to a special midweek episode of Transition Stories. This was in my head going to be on Thursday, but I'm at a football match tomorrow for Trans Day of Visibility, so we're doing it a day early for Trans Day of Visibility with the wonderful midweek stream. And for those of you who know who I am, welcome. For those of you who don't know who I am and you're here because of the wonderful Emma, welcome. I am Phoebe J. Rose, and I am a trans woman, I think I'm a trans woman. Well, I've been calling myself that for a few years now, but there you go. I just prefer to call myself a woman. And I'm the host of Transition Stories, and this is Emma. So say hello, Emma.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. So what brings you to my campfire and the world of my campfire gatherers?
Well, you asked me to come, so I did.
Well, you know, these things happen, you see. The turning around and the coming of things and wonderful awesomeness. It's like, well, you know, some people say jump and they say sod off. Some people say jump and they say how high. Well, one of the people went, yeah, how high can I go? And he decided to come on here. So
yeah, crossing of the paths. I think you got in touch. Like it's been about 4 months in the making.
It's been a while. It's definitely been a while in the making. It's definitely not been one of those things that has been, oh yeah, you free tomorrow? Nah. And anyone who thinks that that's the way I work, you've never met somebody that's quite as, how can I say this, thorough as I am. And as student Dr. Ben in the wonderful chat will attest to, I am one of those people that, you just can't quite get, anything less thorough out of me. But yes, and so why don't you tell my audience a little bit about yourself?
So my name's Emma Smith, and I'm a football journalist at Goal. I'm also a podcaster. I appear on the Week Unwrapped podcast as a panelist, and I am. What else? What?
Why are you here tonight? Why are you here on my show tonight called Transition Stories? What brings you here? What's this strange person called Emma doing on my show?
Well, I am a trans woman. I came out started transitioning in 2019. Probably about just over 3 years since started that whole long process. And it seems, and I think it's always good when to talk about these things and have these things, and share experiences, particularly with sort of like news as there's been like today and over the last couple of days, sort of like this.
Yes, that kind of railroaded me slightly. It's like, okay, I was going live anyway, so I guess we're going to talk about, the first member of parliament to say that they suffer from gender dysphoria.
Yeah,
I'm not going to go as far as to say that they're a trans person because they're not doing any form of trans, but I will go as far as to say they're a non-cis person that is an individual that's experienced gender dysphoria. I don't know enough about this person. I feel a bit, this person has come out and a load of British politicians have gone, yeah, good for you. I was transphobic last night. Yeah, good for you. I expressly decided that I was going to disband, all of the things that my predecessor did, and I expressly hate everything that she did, so therefore all the good work she was doing is gone. Yeah, good for you. I was shouting at you and calling you a nasty, nasty Tory because I'm a member of the Labour Party yesterday, but now, wonderful hugs. It's like, politicians for you. Politicians for you.
Yeah, to say the least. And yes, obviously, if people don't know about it, I think it's Jamie Wallace, the name of the MP.
Yes, Jamie Wallace, basically, Conservative MP for Bridgend in Wales.
Put out a statement today with all sorts of slightly disconcerting and harrowing information, sort of like saying that they've been victim of.
It did feel very much like I'm doing this all in one go.
Yeah, getting everything out in the open sort of at once. Sort of saying that they've been victim of
blackmail,
sexual assault,
sexual assault / the R word, which I can't say because it violates the terms of service.
Okay. But then and then slipping in there that they
I'd also experienced gender dysphoria.
Yes, gender dysphoria. I'm not trans, but I want to be, which kind of seems which isn't a thing.
I'm not trans, but I want to be.
Yeah, which I think it seems like a very much a misunderstanding of how it all works. And then in a follow-up statement saying, I'm still presenting as male, he, him pronouns.
I think what we call this is somebody who is exploring their gender identity.
Yeah, and sort of it very much seems like someone who's been sort of pushed into doing this
because
in a
being
way that
blackmailed is never fun, and somebody demanding a 5-figure sum for their silence is never fun, and I can't imagine it's a lot of fun at the moment for this individual.
No, it's obviously it's not the kind of statement that you put out by choice. No, but I think at best, I think what it can be at best it seems very early and sort of like very soon to be like sort of putting something out like it's very much that as if the person writing it doesn't seem to quite know what they're
wanting or knowing or understanding yet.
Yeah.
Just like how I felt when I was coming out, and probably how you felt when you were coming out, and how a lot of the people in my chat felt when coming out. So, yes, less about the MP and more about yourself.
Okay.
So, how long have you been at this game for?
As in, how long since I transitioned? I guess. I mean, as I started coming out to excuse me. I started going. What would be the best? Like, sort of had it thinking, sort of going. Not sure for years, and then sort of in early 2019, came out to friends and family, and then was sort of going through that that process and came out sort of publicly in sort of like in World Work and that in November 2019. It would have been October or November. Yeah, and then sort of going from there. It's a
gradual process.
It's something that you can kind of hear that don't really know sort of like the words how to talk about because it's just sort of who I am. Yeah.
It's not something that you pick out of a dictionary and go, well, I'm going to describe it like this, and this. It's more like in the world of doctoring, some people say there are hundreds of words for certain conditions and one word for other conditions because no one's researched it. And I think that's kind of how a lot of trans people feel about trying to describe their own feelings. It's never really been, you don't really get fiction written about it, so you don't have that beautiful literary prose that was written by like Jane Austen or Enid Blyton or something like that, who could just write reams of really flowery language and make up their own words that really sounded nice. I don't think we've really had that as trans people in a positive sense, if you see where I'm coming from.
Well, I guess sort of because my primary work is sort of as a written journalist. So actually when I came out to my family, I actually wrote them in a letter. I did it. I was living in London at the time, and they're living up in Newcastle, which is where I'm from.
Geordie. Posh.
Yeah, posh Geordie. Emphasis on the posh. I mean, can't you tell from my strong Geordie accent?
Well, can't you tell that you're speaking to a really posh southerner here?
And
one could talk like this throughout the entire interview and do it in RP if you would feel more comfortable with the poshness of the interview going up a few notches. I should have bought a cup and saucer and maybe handed out some loose leaf tea and I don't know, had some crustless cucumber sandwiches.
You see, that's too posh even for me. Yeah, I take my shoes off when I go indoors. That's posh enough for me.
I do that around a friend's house, and she goes, "You're well trained, aren't you?" I said, "No, I'm Southern and you're Scottish."
Yeah, exactly. But the point is that in terms of coming out, I told my parents and through and several family members and friends via letter, because partly because of logistics. I was living in London at the time, and a lot of people that I needed to tell were living up in the north. And partly because that was how I was much more comfortable expressing myself, both at the time and to an extent now, as you can probably tell. Um, and it allowed me to sort of explain things and sort of go a little bit more into sort of like exactly how long I've been feeling like this, exactly what it means, exactly who it means, who I am and who I'm not, sort of, and go through that in a way that sort of like was a lot easier to do in written words for me than it was through spoken words. And then when I came out to the wider world, I did it in a statement that I wrote and posted on Twitter, because again, that was much easier for me to do
So,
like that.
were you in journalism at the time?
Yeah, so I have always worked in journalism, and pretty much always in sports journalism. And I in 2020, when I was working in journalism, but when I came out in November to the wider world, I wasn't working at the time because I tried to come out in person at at the job that I was in before, um, and it hadn't gone very well. And basically, it was made very clear that sort of it wasn't going to work, and so I had to leave that job. So I was sort of, yeah, my position in sort of late 2019 was unemployed, newly out trans woman trying to get into back into sports journalism, which was not, in hindsight, a particularly
End of 2019 seems to
fun
have been
place to be.
I say the end of 2019 seems to be one of those places that was a really weird time for a lot of people in my life, including myself.
Mm. And then
So
it was like,
yes.
2020 is going to be a lot more smooth. And
Yeah, I was really looking forward to 2020. I had a brand new job. I'd survived a near-death experience. It's like, yeah, 2020 is the year for me. It's like,
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then it's like, and that was kind of the situation for me, is that I'd sort of like had been unemployed for about 5 months, and then late February 2020, Goal offered me the job that I have now, and it was like, oh, I start in a month, sort of give me time to move to Leeds and get moved in and sort of like sort myself living, and like end of March, that'd be great. Just get started a new job, brilliant. Work going to the office as Emma for the first time, working job that I love as Emma for the first time, industry that I love, and this will be great. And my first day in the job at Goal was the first day of lockdown one. Because
but
yeah,
here's the question: had you successfully done the relocation to another part of England before lockdown one?
yes, I was lucky enough that I've moved into a friend's house, and sort of like moved into their spare room, and they've since moved out, and I've inherited the whole flat. So now their spare room is this office which I'm now speaking to you from. So it's worked out quite well in the long
is
run.
that they better have been a bloody good friend for you to be, locked up with them.
It was great, and to be honest, it was actually a lot better to do it that way than have to move to a whole new city, having just come out newly as trans, and sort of like then be sort of locked up in my on like sort of living alone in a lockdown. So that was actually quite fortunate. But yeah, that was the period between sort of, I guess, March 2019 and March 2020 was a pretty rough year, and that it sort of made the COVID years seem pretty smooth by comparison.
So was this roughness because of your transitioning, or was it because of other factors as well as the transitioning?
Um, I think it was the other factors in sort of connection to my transitioning. So I mean, I was I think I what would be the best way of describing it?
Would it be a confluence of things that all bubbled up together, would you say? That all came together to make it a more difficult time? Because I say, what I found when I look back on my own transition is that there was always a oomph that made me go, now. Did you have that oomph as well?
I think, yeah, sort of. So in like, I think the best way of doing it is sort of chronologically, and that's sort of like, or going back years and years and years. I'd always sort of, there was always, I basically growing up sort of in England in sort of like the 90s, early 2000s, sort of like I didn't have any sort of reference point for feeling different to other kids and sort of like, and trying to decide if I was this or that.
Being a school kid in the 90s in England was really rough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was sort of like, I was born in 92, so I guess I did most of my growing up in the early 2000s, in the 2000s.
I'm an 89 kid, so...
Yeah. So, yeah, we get sort of around a similar amount of time, and I mean, like, yeah, I think, I can't remember when Section 28 was removed.
I can tell you the exact dates. 1989 to 2003, so that covered my entire schooling.
Yeah, exactly. So I would have been 11.
I was really lucky.
Yeah, so I would have been 11 when it was when it was appealed, but then that sort of influenced sort of like the remainder of my schooling, and sort of like, no, we went and talked about LGBT people, like about growing, like, you as a teenager when you're sort of like trying to understand your body and understand who you are, didn't really have any sort of understanding of why I was feeling the way I was feeling, and sort of feeling quite unhappy, and then sort of and then trying to sort of explore my gender in sort of like but because there was sort of no reference points, and I didn't really know sort of, and in media, and like there's like
good old Ace Ventura,
like, yeah, or Little Britain and all that, sort of like that was my growing up watching that, and sort of like not exactly having
never
the
a positive influence, was it?
It's sort of ideas of being gender diverse sort of reinforced the idea that it was something to be completely ashamed of, and something to be
and then you had the other extreme. Was, I don't know if they came to a city near you, but you had the Lady Boys of Bangkok that always used to tour near me.
Oh yeah, we saw those about those were often around in Newcastle. They always seem to be at the near the Centre for Life, which is right near Newcastle Station, sort of like, and there's this big like science museum, Centre for Life, and there's always be this big, and occasionally there'd be this big banner hanging from like the entrance saying Lady Boys of Bangkok, and it's just like, isn't that a thing?
And that's kind of all the only references that I remember growing up. Was it the same for you?
Yeah, basically there were no sort of like any sort of like reference being what it was, cross-dressers, transvestites, and so maybe that's sort of what I am, or maybe, but then I'm attracted to boys, and like sort of, or maybe I'm gay, or I'm bisexual, and then what's this? And it's just going through all these sort of different labels and trying to apply them to yourselves, and then none of them actually really fit. But then it was sort of like I got to uni, and sort of like, and even then it was sort of like I was a bit, the impact of having I had a loving childhood, but it was a very conservative childhood, a very sheltered childhood, very
middle class childhood,
very middle class, very white, very straight childhood. Like, I've got my mum's one of 10 kids, and so I've got a lot of cousins and aunties and uncles, but none of them are, as far as I'm aware, LGBT or anything like that. So I had no sort of like familial sort of connections to sort of like anyone who's sort of out, and so it was like, yeah.
So I'm just laughing at Ox, who goes, Phoebe, guest.
Yeah, sorry, I can't see the chat, so I'm.
That's okay. It's just
sort of like,
you might occasionally see things just pop up on the screen.
Okay,
But anyway,
yeah,
I interrupt you. I do
occasion
apologise for that. But yeah,
odd
very
things.
middle class, very white
Mhm.
upbringing, very, how can I say it? Very John Major upbringing.
Yeah,
Almost.
yes, I guess so. I mean, yeah, I was sort of more Tony Blair either, but then
Yeah,
again,
very
that's
John Major, very Tony Blair, very much
kind of same
middle
thing.
of the road, stoic. This is what cool Britannia is. Don't do anything silly.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you have, yeah, if you know those emotions and those feelings you might have, just push them down a bit. Yeah, just
Yeah.
keep a straight face, keep calm and carry on, which is the phase that I absolutely loathe. Then and then that had and then that had sort of an impact on me when I got to uni. And I mean, I met someone who's and was sort of in a what appeared to be a very sort of straightforward relationship like for about 5 years, but it was always this sort of like how it's like sort of eating away thing in the back of your your head is this sort of like things aren't right, and
Something never quite settles is the way that I've heard
yeah,
it described.
exactly. And actually, sort of like keeping on pushing and pushing and pushing and that away, and actually it meant that I was concentrating a lot on, and I actually put all my efforts into my career, and managed to get into working in sports journalism and sort of like pursuing this career that I was my dream career, and writing about sports. Oh, great. Then it got um, sort of, I think, like late 2018, September, October 2018, and basically the relationship that I was in fizzled and broke up in sort of quite an acrimonious way, and so all of a sudden I was, in my mid-20s, single, living in London, and I was like, okay, what do I sort of a sudden I was sort of independent for the first time, and it's like, okay, now I have to sort of think about where I want to go next with my life, and sort of like, oh, I must, go out, find someone else, find another partner, find another girlfriend or something, and it's like, because that's what's expected of me. But then it was just like, well, I'm not a teenager, not a student, not a child anymore. I have to kind of sort of really think about seriously what I want.
It's like, do I want to own a house? Do I want to have children? And other such middle class worries that, parents that said to me, so when are you doing these things? It's like, did you ever have those pressures?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've got a older brother, younger sister who are both great. They're sort of they're the sensible sort of siblings. They're both in steady, straight relationships. My brother's just bought his first house. My sister has just moved in with her boyfriend. They both, they're both doing great, and I'm sort of which actually takes a lot of pressure off me. It means I could be the weird middle child and do her own thing, and sort of like it's but at the time I wasn't sort of wasn't hugely thinking about that. But then yeah, late 2018, it was like very much, okay, what do I want to do now? So, and I have to sit down and have a real think about this. And I did, and it was like, I've always wanted to explore my gender. I've never felt like a straight man. Like, I've never felt cis, so, and what does this all mean? And started doing, sort of like looking into things and exploring things on my own. And there wasn't a eureka moment. I can't tell you the exact moment in which I was like, oh, this must be who I am. It was it came about very gradually between, I guess, sort of the last few months of 2018, and it was like, there's something in this, and this feels right. Like, I've been searching for who I am for a good 20 years, and and I think I finally figured it. Finally happened upon it, and it was a really sort of blissful feeling, I guess, more than anything else. It's just like,
How would you describe when you worked out to yourself what you had achieved. Not necessarily when you came out to other people, not necessarily when you said that, but when you almost look back slightly and go, buggering hell, I've actually done it.
Yeah, I mean, like I think it's just I genuinely feel like my life began on sort of like New Year's Day 2019, because that was when I started making sort of like more sort of forming plans about sort of like, it was like New Year, New Me, to be very sort of cliche about it. But back then I was like, you know, a bloke with short hair and a beard, and sort of like very
You
sort
wrote
of
for a magazine.
I vote for actually I vote for Mail Online. I've worked for Mail Online for nearly 3 years, so I was working there at the time.
That was an experience.
Well, it was actually great. I really enjoyed my time there working on the sports desk, and actually I was at the Sports Journalism Awards about a month ago. I presented an award. I wasn't up for nominated for anything, but I was there, and because of everything, obviously with me, I left the job at the Mail in May 2019, and then obviously I left
Are
London.
those the people that said we would prefer it if you didn't?
Oh no, actually they weren't. People think it might be the Mail, but actually it wasn't. And actually, when I came out, I had loads of messages from people that I worked with at the Mail saying, "We're really happy for you, congratulations." Like, obviously the Mail's, everyone knows what it's like, but actually the guys who worked on the sports desk, I've got nothing but respect for them, because they were good guys to work with.
So they're not
a lot of them
they're
are very
not
good
Paul
journalists.
Dacres of this world, then.
No,
They're not all Paul Dacres on the sports desk.
Yeah, no, a lot of them are just 20-something guys who just trying to make it in sports journalism, which is kind of what I thought I was when I took that job. I was a 20-something girl trying to make it in sports journalism, and still am. But the point was that I then saw a lot of them again, because I got a few of them were at the Sports Journalism Awards, and I hadn't seen them in in nearly 3 years, and the last time they'd seen me, I was a bloke with a beard and a suit, and it was just like speaking to them, and a lot of them were, and they were all great. We chatted about sort of the how we'd been, how things were at their office, how things were in my new job, sort of catching up and all that kind of stuff, and it was all good. Like, everyone used my name, my pronouns, and it was just like, oh wow! Like, the last time I saw all of you, I was in an extremely sort of uncertain place, just trying to come out, trying to figure myself out, trying to express my gender sort of properly and in public for the first time. And now I'm speaking to you, having just presented an award with my long blonde hair and little black dress and all that kind of stuff. And it's like,
well, so what was the curiosity is getting the better of me. What award did you present? What was it? What was it?
What was what?
The award you presented.
Oh, I presented the Digital Publisher of the Year to the best basically best sports website. Presented it. CNN won it, which was a bit of a surprise, but that's very good. And I mean, there's pictures of that on like Twitter and stuff, and I just look at myself and I'm like, oh wow, I look really hot. And it's like I look complete, like, unfathomably different to not only what I was like when I was before I transitioned, but when I started my transition. It's just like yeah, sort of like I look back and like the last 2.5 years, and it's just like things have just got, for the most part, better and better, which is kind of, and having spent a good quarter of a century with things often not being great, it's like, oh, it's like going from watching an old black and white TV to watching like a full color HD. And that's what's transition's been like for me.
It's like from a black and white license to a color television license.
It's like it's like actually, it's like, oh, this is what life's supposed to look like. And
I've only been paying for the black and white license, and now I've got rid of that and realized I could pay for the color license. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
For those of you who
And I mean,
aren't
it's like-
British that don't understand television licenses in the UK, it still exists today that you can have a television license that only entitles you to watch black and white TV. And there's no lie. They still need a license to watch television in the UK, and they can still sell you a black and white TV license and a colour TV license, and it's just absolutely. And if you're blind, you get a reduction on your television license, and if you're deaf, you don't get a reduction on your television license.
Yep, that's British bureaucracy for you.
That's Britain for you.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of world that I've been
Yeah.
navigating for nearly, dare I say it, 12 years. And Emma, you've been navigating it for nearly 3 years. So how are you finding the navigation of bureaucracy?
Before that, I noticed before someone said that they want my hair. Well, first of all, you can't have it, but second of all, thank you. Navigating the bureaucracy. My current status is that, because I was living down in London at the time when I first came out, and I mean, I had a very good GP, Dr. Das Gupta in Tottenham. Lovely bloke. I don't know if he's still practicing, but he was so wonderfully helpful and sort of like set me and referred me to Tavistock and stuff like. And but the thing is that he referred me to Tavistock in, I think it went through April 2019. And they're still on seeing people who referred, like, what is it, like late 2017 or something like that?
Yeah, so, I think they're still on late 2017. So I don't think they're quite moved into 2018 yet, but
Yeah, so I'm nearly, I'm nearly a year away. But I mean, like, the thing is that, but yeah, I mean, God knows how that will actually transpire into waiting times. But anyway. So yeah, so I'm currently going through that, and unfortunately, believe it or not, sports journalism doesn't actually pay well enough for me to go entirely private. So I'm currently quite heavily at the mercy of the NHS waiting times. I am on hormones because I did get the acceptance of the referral and on the bridging hormones, and again, I got very lucky with my GPs here in Leeds, guys at Whitehall Surgery, again, shouting out to them because they've been, for the most part, really, really good and really, really helpful. And then they've sort of need to help with stuff like I'm currently in the process of waiting for my gender recognition certificate, applied for that. And they were great helping out with that.
What I will say is don't be surprised if the first one you get is a no and the second one you get is a yes. Because there are so many people, myself included, that have applied for a GRC that did everything by the book the first time and was told and put back in exactly the same paperwork and got ding.
Well, hopefully first time will be the charm. If not, second time around, we'll see how that goes. But yeah,
I do know people that have gone first time through, and it's just like,
it's like, what is your magic, and can you teach me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
can I have your elixir of GRC, please?
Exactly. Can you have you're in with whichever beige suit is reading
I thought it was an off-tan suit.
Either way, it's hideous.
It's always dreadful. But I'd say the gender recognition panel has to be the most British thing to have ever been devised. I know people get a whole load of documents, some medical reports, and make them live their life for a load of years, and then have them send it all off to a group of people they're not allowed to meet. And then they will just decide on the papers, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. It's just like the most British thing ever.
It's the kind of thing that like Terry Gilliam or whoever can actually come up with, because then you think, oh, that's just a bit too ridiculous. I mean, like if you put them in like Brazil or something, it would be like, okay, you pushed it a bit too far there. But I'm basically, when you're trans in Britain, it evolves. Just you get used to waiting. you wait and you wait and you wait, and
We enjoy a good queue, as they say.
exactly. But I mean, I feel like I feel like sort of like I am making progress, slow progress, but there is sort of like purpose and progress being made. So and so there is positivity. I'm approaching my 1 year hormone anniversary, as it were. I think it was April 2020 when I started on the various tit pills
Various
and
tablets and
patches
injections and
injections
patches and gels and welcome to the
all those.
wonderful world of pharmaceuticals.
Exactly. But yeah, I've got them all sort of like piled up next to me on my desk here, and it's that feeling of like, as slow a progress it is, it's sort of like the progress of being me and becoming me and being more happy being me, and it's like I don't mind how long it takes because I know it's a continuously upward curve. Obviously, it's not the upward curve that you'd like, but it is upward. So at least it's like there's that which is helpful for mental health and all that.
So, thinking of journalism in general, how have you found transitioning has interacted with your job? Because it must have had some changes to the way that you interacted with the people you were interviewing, interacted with the sports you were covering. How did it manifest?
So to go in sort of the timeline again, I left the Mail in May 2019. Jenny says boob food. I call them titty pills. I left the Mail. I left the Mail May 2019. By which time I was sort of very like I just started like getting on the road. But it was basically 2019. I just decided, you know what, I'm going to change literally everything. I'm going to change my job. I'm going to change where I live. I'm going to change my gender. Fresh new year, new me. And I left and I went to this company where I did have some really good times. I traveled the world to cover on sport. I've traveled to Samoa to cover the Pacific Games, and to Japan to report on judo. It was kind of mad and it was great and fun, but I was sort of having this sort of personal thing at the same time. And then once I'd got into the job a few months in, I thought, you know what, I'm now a bit more settled here. I'd like to tell you that I'm trans. And it didn't go down very well. Basically, they called me, like the person who's in charge basically called me into a meeting and said, look, we think that you deceived us by not telling us that you're trans. You've been sly. You've manipulated us by not being honest. And yeah, and it was like, okay, I'm going to have to quit this job immediately because this is clearly not a good place for me to be.
Clearly sick.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm now further on. I've now moved on with my life, and I'm now in a much better place and a much more confident place. But I mean, like at the time, that basically almost broke me, and it was like it was not great. And what it actually did, and actually this sort of semi connects back to the news that we had today. It really rushed forwards when I was coming out publicly, because I hadn't started on hormones or anything like that. My hair was like short. I wasn't hugely comfortable still presenting as female, sort of out and about in public life, using a female name and all that kind of stuff. None of my documents in a female name, but I couldn't face finding another job as my old, and then having to go through that whole transition process again. So
you didn't want to come out for a second time.
Not in that way, no. So I thought, well, I am going to come out one last time. I'm going to tell them, I started applying for jobs as Emma, but it was like, in journalism, social media is huge, and it made no sense if I was going to be, that if I was applying as Emma, but all my social media was under a different name, and also I'd written loads of stuff that I was very proud of, award nominated articles, interviews that, exclusives that I was very proud of, that were all under my old name. I wanted to include those as examples of, pioneer me as a sports journalist. Look at all this stuff that I've written. But I couldn't go back to the Mail, go back to all these other places and say, these hundreds of articles I've written, can you change Can you change my name on all of them, please? So it was like...
Did you win any awards for your journalism before you came out?
I was nominated for student... I was nominated for, I think it was like graduate sports journalist of the year, or student sports journalist of the year. This is the thing when people ask me what my name used to be. It's like I don't like what my dead name was. I don't
I'm not going to advertise it, but it's not a secret.
But what I say is that if you're really that obsessed with it, and if you're really that interested, like there's plenty of documentary evidence of what I used to be and of what my name used to be and what I used to look like. If you're you're sad enough to want to actually find that stuff out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So but the thing is that I wanted all that. I wanted my good work on my CV, and I wanted to get back to it. And so it's like, okay, well, I guess I'm coming out now then. And it's like, okay, this is at least a year before I'd be comfortable doing this in person, and I told that to my old job. I was like, look, I'm not expecting you to call me Emma now and like send me to all these events as a woman, like, but this is what's happening, and but it was like, okay, everything's going to be sped up a lot more now. And then it came to the stage that November 2019 was when I basically put a message on my Twitter saying, "Hey, I'm trans. My name's Emma. Peace out."
Not what it was, but now please call me Emma.
And then posted that, and then turned my internet off for 3 hours and went for a very long walk, and then came back, and and people were for the most part really, really great about it. But then that sort of left me. But I was still unemployed and still a newly out trans woman, not very confident. But then I managed. But then that sort of meant that in between jobs, while I was trying to find jobs and stuff like that, I could work on myself, and then managed to get the position at Goal, who were just absolutely fantastic, focused entirely on me, during the course of like the 3 interviews that I did with them, just focused entirely on me as a journalist, on my body of work, and and me being trans was, clearly like not an issue at all. They wanted to have me, and in the end it was great. And in the end it worked out. And that meant that sort of like in March 2020, as the world fell apart, my world was sort of coming together, and like I had that, and I remember like this first article that I wrote for Goal. It's this rubbish like quotes piece about Timo Werner joining Liverpool, which obviously turned out to be absolute bollocks.
Well, it's Timo Werner. I wouldn't have put one stake
It was
in Timo Werner.
It was like, is Timo Werner going to transform Liverpool's attack? It's like no and no. But
at the time, Liverpool didn't need Timo Werner to transform their attack.
So whatever. So, but underneath the headline was the name Emma Smith, and it was like, oh wow, that's a piece of sports journalism, piece of my thing, with my name on it, my actual name, a name that I like, a name that's me,
name that I selected,
a name that's actually reflects who I am and how I feel about myself. And that was really pretty cool, to say the least.
Since you've come out, have you found that there's been a focus on your journalism towards more LGBT and trans issues, or has that always been part of your journalism? Or is that just the way that the industry is going, that now there's more visibility, you're covering it more?
Well, I mean, it was me who sort of suggested that I could do some of this stuff. I think it was June 2019. It was like it was like Pride Month 2019. I was like, I think that, I sort of suggested, I could maybe do a piece about sort of LGBT people in sport, because I sort of noticed that it wasn't an area of sports, excuse me, that sports journalism was covering particularly well, or with sort of like any level of sort of like empathy or sort of expertise, sort of lived experience.
Because men's football really does have a problem with LGBT issues, in my opinion.
It really does. And I wanted to sort of like talk about, like, tell these stories in a way that wasn't, footballer has angst about coming out, silhouette, like with a silhouette picture. It's like, who is this? Who is it? Could it be? Talk amongst yourselves. Who is the gay footballer?
Front page of the Sun.
Yeah, it's like sort of fear mongering, rumor mongering. It's like the idea that being gay, being trans, being LGBT is something that's sort of shameful.
And the only reference point that the world of English football has is Justin Fashanu.
Yes, exactly. Which isn't exactly, not the most happy story in the world, to say the very least.
When his own brother, when Justin's own brother John said, "I wouldn't feel comfortable being in the same changing room as that animal." It's just like, that's your own brother.
Yeah, and like sort of, he came out, well, I think before I was born, and like died when I was very young, and sort of like, and that's still the only reference point is that English football has for top level gay player, which is pretty shocking when you think about it. And it was like, okay, what can I do now that I'm in a position as a professional sports journalist, a pretty major a notable organization, as someone who is now out and visible as a member of the LGBT community. What can I do what can I do, basically? And I asked, is there room to do some features around Pride Month on LGBT people in football? My editor, I really expected my editor to say, no, that's too niche. No, you've only been here a couple of months. No, that's not something we'd be interested in. They were extremely enthusiastic. And honestly, I could not speak more highly of the guys who are the editorial staff at Goal in the way that they've supported me in covering LGBT plus sports, people in sport, those kind of stories.
Yeah,
and I think it's made Goal into sort of it's really sort of made Goal into a organization that LGBT people can trust. I'd really hope that would be the case in terms of,
it's like, this is going to sound weird, but if I was to pick up an article written by Goal, I'd know that it wasn't coming at the same angle. Let's say something in the Telegraph sports section was coming at me.
No, and I think, and obviously that we wouldn't want that in any of the football that we cover. Not that the Telegraph sport doesn't cover at least certain elements of sport well. It clearly does, but our audience is not the Telegraph's audience. For example, it is not. We're an online-only website. We want to focus on a much younger demographic. We want to focus on a more worldwide demographic, because we are a worldwide sports football website rather than like a English football sheet newspaper. And therefore, in terms of focusing younger and less, and more broadly than a lot of British media, it's allowed us sort of to tackle and look at stories in a way that the more traditional print media probably wouldn't. And that's something that I've tried to explore while in the writing that in the stories that I tell.
So, where do you see particularly trans representation? We've got the whole scientific discovery going on at the moment, I think is the best way to describe it, with trans people in sport, and the very toxic niche discussions. I won't call it a debate, because it's not a debate, because my existence playing football on a Sunday is not up for discussion, or it's not up for debate, but it's more of a chatter, I think is the best way to put it, because I'm not going to stop playing just because some idiot has said that they don't like me on the pitch. Where do you think that it's going to go? And do you think it's reached its nadir moment of this can't get any stupider?
I certainly think that it's. I think that you can almost see that there's a slight softening already towards trans people in sport. We had sort of like the let's take the coverage of Laurel Hubbard at the Olympics, which was, I think, pretty much universally across the British media, universally pretty negative, and suspicious and sort of questioning, and claiming that this was the
death knell of women's
this is the death knell of women's sport, the death knell of the Olympics, and just and you compare that to the stuff that we've seen this week about Emily Bridges, who sadly now doesn't seem like she'll be competing in the British Cycling Championships this weekend, but looked as though she was going to be. And it seems as if there's a more sort of less of an anger at individual athletes for supposedly trying to destroy women's sport, and more about, well, are governing bodies doing the right thing in protecting athletes and protecting the integrity of their sport, which is, I think, a more worthwhile question to ask.
Yes,
because I think that policies, like sort of policies from the IOC, policies from sort of individual governing sporting bodies, haven't always been consistent or
even
or
in some
in-depth
cases coherent.
Coherent. They've not been up to date, and I think that there's more realization from the wider British media and the wider British sporting public is like, okay, we can't direct our ire at individual athletes because they don't have the power. They're just trying to compete,
Yeah, and I think the other thing that has caused a lot of issues is that there is such a wide range of different policies, from World Rugby at one end to World Roller Derby at the other end, going, we don't really care, and the other one going, how dare you, trans women can't even step on a pitch.
Yeah, and I sort of worry that given this renewed now intensifying focus on governing bodies, that is going to push them into introducing more hardline policies on trans women, which aren't necessarily and trans men and trans women and non-binary people, that aren't necessarily backed by best practice, backed by sort of scientific, by any sort of science, anything like that, but more based on, okay, we need to
be seen to be doing.
What
can we get through our board?
To sound a bit Trumpy, we need to stop this problem while we work out what the hell's going on.
Make our sport great again.
Yes, exactly, and basically get rushed into make. I mean, we're seeing that there's, UCI have said that Emily Bridges can't compete this weekend. We wait to work out why. I suspect it may well be something to do with their, it's about protecting women's sport. We're seeing that World Swimming are considering changing their policies after Thomas did the shocking thing of winning an event,
and finishing fifth.
And then finishing eighth in something else,
Yes.
True domination.
Guess what? A standard swimming event for somebody who is a distance swimmer who took part in short distance races. Because Leah
Yeah,
Thomas is a distance swimmer. Leah Thomas won, I think it was the 1,500-yard race or the 800-yard race. And in the 100-yard race, she was like 8th. And in the 200-yard race, she was 5th. But in the longer distance race, she just...
recorded a time in her winning event, which I think was 22 seconds slower than Katie Ledecky, who's the Olympic champion. So, destroying women's sport.
Absolutely. I mean, Katie Ledecky can't hold a candle to Leah Thomas. It's just...
Exactly. It's insane.
Michael Phelps has got to be worried about all those world records as well. Michael Phelps and his biological advantages, they've all got to be worried as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that the most hypocritical thing in this whole thing is when you do have people like Michael Phelps turn around and say, how dare Leah Thomas compete because she's got a biological advantage? And then you turn around and go, but look at yourself, Michael. You were born with enormous biological advantages yourself, courtesy of your genetics, that you have no control over. Just like Leah has no control over the fact that she is trans. It's just like the blind hypocrisy of some of these individuals that are shaping the debate is just enraging.
Yeah, and it's a case of you can say pretty much whatever you want as long as it's as long as you're straight cis and you can get away with sort of like. And
if you're straight cis, it's probably more likely to get away with it if you're male as well.
Yeah, as long as and if it's that particular sort of discourse, then great. I don't know. It feels like it's because I think because it's hopefully now we're slightly getting past the what is this? Isn't this ridiculous? Why are we even considering this debate into actually, okay, let's actually have a look at this properly. And I mean, and that's what I want. As someone who prides themselves on being trying to be a decent journalist, trying to do their work properly. Yeah. When you cover a story, you have to do it properly. And it now feels like the rest of the picture media is like, okay, we're not going to just treat this as some kind of joke. We're going to look at
the science. We're actually going to have genuine, repeatable, reliable science that we're basing these things on.
Yeah, and I mean it's that doesn't necessarily mean that coverage of trans people in sport is going to be in any way it's not going to make it any more pleasant to sort of open up the Telegraph or the Times or whatever and read about the way they're writing about trans athletes. But at least it's not going to be we're moving from being treated as a joke to being treated as something to be actually treated with any sort of I guess
treated as anyone else that's competing,
a degree of grudging respect. Let's call it that.
If a trans person happens to win, grudgingly you'll have to write about it.
Yeah, and you can say about how it's going to destroy sport, but I mean it's like
Here's an odd question to wrap up this little bit here. Do you enjoy this part of where journalism is going, or do you see it as this is going to be painful, but it's going to be rosier on the other side?
Well, I think you have to believe in the second part, because if you don't believe that we're going to get any better, then what's the point? I still remain hopeful that things will things will improve. Yeah,
and I think that's where we all want to go. And I say, I've just got one final question here for yourself. If you could write an article to Childhood Emma, what would you title that article and what would its content be? What would today's Emma write their article to Childhood Emma, and what would the title of that article and its content be?
That's a good question. The point I lost my train of the last question, but the thing that I was going to say is that in terms of the debate, and the way that media covers trans people in sport, it's like it's I think it needs to sort of move away from the trying to both sides and basically having it so that you can sort of like shout, do can women have penises? Can men have vaginas at each other? Is this destroying things? I think if the media can move on beyond that and be in a much better place.
Yeah.
In terms of what I would say to, it's like I guess what I would like things as Emma is like, you're not gonna believe this. It's gonna blow your mind. But these things that you're having, this sort of like weird sort of desire, this jealousy of girls, this, sort of like feeling of being incredibly uncomfortable and awkward in your own body, this feeling of like wanting to explore sort of the way that you dress and the way that you look and this, all that stuff. Well, first of all, you're not going to believe what it actually means in your tiny, closeted, very
Northern
small
England.
sort of Northern England middle class world. But also, it's nothing to be ashamed of. You are not the only one. There's nothing wrong with you. You shouldn't think that you're some kind of freak, because you're not. You can actually be the person you want to be. You can actually get the job that you want. You can actually live the life that you want while being yourself. And you can 29-year-old Emma writing to, I don't know, angsty, depressed 13, 14-year-old Emma, you can actually be happy.
And are you proud of yourself?
Yes, I'm extremely proud of myself. Which is not something that I'm proud of myself in a very British way, and I'm proud in that.
You're proud of yourself in a very understated. Yes.
I feel proud. I feel proud of myself, and then I feel proud of myself, and then I feel embarrassed about being proud. It's like, oh, for God's sake, Emma,
don't be. Look, I was brought up not to show any, self-congratulatory tones at all. How? Yes, but.
It's like, yes, but don't you be showing emotion there? How unbecoming.
As my grandfather would have said, "Good golly, how dare you!" Good for you.
Along those lines, yes. But I really am, and it's like, I don't think that I do this enough, and I think that a lot of trans people need to do this, which is put down your phones.
On my show.
Well, first of all, come on Phoebe's show, because she's great. But put down your phones, stop having arguments on Twitter, stop and just actually sit and look at yourself and look at where you are now compared to where you were, I don't know, a few months ago, a few years ago, and you'd suddenly be like, oh wow, you're doing really well here, and you're doing much better than you probably give yourself credit for. And I think that, and I need to do that more, and I think a lot of trans people need to do that more too.
So are you happy with you?
Goodness, this has got a bit deep.
So it's one of my previous guests said, you just turn the heat up and you don't even realise.
I'm suddenly regretting putting on the space heater here in Leeds. To be fair, it's about 2 degrees outside and it was snowing earlier. So
that'll be Leeds for you.
Yeah, and now it was 18 degrees at the weekend. I was in shorts and
I went down the beach. I went down the beach and in the sea.
And then, that was very big. And now I'm cowering at home as it snows outside. Have I avoided your question? Have I avoided your question? No.
So are you happy with you?
Yes, because I feel like I'm going in the right direction.
And this path, is it the path you want to go down? And are you happy where it's brought you so far?
Yeah, I mean, we always want better things. It's like I wish I had, there were times like, oh, I wish my job was a little bit more interesting at times. I wish there was I wish I was a little bit more, wish I had a bit more money so I could actually afford to like have go private. I wish I didn't have to wait around so much. I wish, I didn't. I wish I didn't have to shave, my face most days. It's like I wish I didn't like. There's so much there's so much I would still change about myself, and there's so much that I think, I guess, could be improved because it's different. But it's like there's so much less that I want to change now than there was. And
So
at least
what
that's
are
something.
you? So what are you happiest with about yourself now?
The fact that the thing that I'm happiest with myself about now is that, as you've probably been able to guess from this chat, I tie up quite a lot of my self-worth with my work. And the fact that I'm able to do that work, which is so important to me as me, and to do it in a way which tries to uplift people like me as much as possible, is something that I'm really happy about. And then also and then to be honest, actually from a personal level, I like the way I look quite a lot more than I mean, again, it's like I feel quite awkward and British about saying that, because you're not supposed to say such.
You're not supposed to enjoy. You're not supposed to. How dare you?
I'm not supposed to enjoy.
How very dare you?
I'm not supposed to enjoy the fact that my face shape's changing and my hips are growing. I've got a really nice
Lovely
arse
long
now.
blonde hair.
Well, this is dyed, to be fair, but
But yeah,
But it's like, oh, you're not actually supposed to enjoy that. But
how dare you? How very British are you? You look nice, but don't indulge.
But I really, there's. I enjoy things on sort of like a mental level in that the work that I do, but I can't enjoy things on a surface, physical, shallow level too.
But yes, well, thank you ever so much for your Wednesday evening, which has been shared with me. I hope that you've enjoyed yourself around these parts, but it's been a wonderful time. So, is there any one line that you'd like to say to the whole world before we wrap up for the evening?
Any one line that I'd like to say for the whole world?
Yeah.
I guess two things: be yourself, and follow me on Twitter and Instagram.
As you can now see scrolling on the bottom, you can now find Emma on Twitter at Emma Smith Journo, and on Instagram at something that Instagram says that.
Yeah, Emmersley. Yeah, basically follow me on Twitter for my work, follow me on Instagram for my selfies, whichever one takes your pick.
Or you
takes
can,
your fancy.
Or if you want work selfies, merge the two together.
I do occasionally take the odd work selfie. Also, I realise that I'm about 5 followers off 1,500, so if I could get to 1,500 off the back of this,
it's the wonderful world of Twitter. Are we almost at parity? Because I've just breached 1,400 on Twitter.
I think I'm just ahead of you.
There are some trans people on there who are in the hundreds of thousands, but they also have YouTube channels with the millions of followers, and it's just like,
oh yeah, like Philosophy Tube. Fun fact to end on. I went to school with Abby Thorne from Philosophy Tube. We were in the same class. We sat.
You can get her on this show. That make my day. You can get her on here.
I'll drop her a line. I'll say, Abby, this
weird Brit wants you on her show.
Yeah, exactly. She's almost as posh. She's almost as posh as you. Yeah, and I mean, but anyway, that was just a little tidbit. It's like, I'm not even the most famous trans woman who was in my Wednesday afternoon physics classes in year 11. That's a thought.
No. People like Abigail Thorne, I just go, if I ever get you in my seat, hello, it's you.
Yeah, and be able to speak. Oh, and I was, when she came out, because she came out whenever it was. It was sometime last year, wasn't it?
Last year.
Yeah, sometime last year, wasn't it? And I remember sort of seeing that tweet that she put out and just being like, oh my word, that's amazing. And then sending her an email to her work email address was like, oh, you probably don't remember me, but we went to school together and I'm delighted to see how things get, like, congratulations. And she wrote back and said, oh my God, how are you? And it was just like, yeah, because that's the thing with trans women is that we all know each other and we all find each other
well,
eventually.
that's So
Exactly.
now instead of being like 20 degrees separation from philosophy tube, I'm now like 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. The world of trans gets smaller and smaller.
It does. But as I say on these shows, at the end of these shows, it's been a wonderful chat, and you only get one life. And Emma, you are living that one life beyond anything I could say is anything but the life that you want to lead, because you only get one life. So lead the best that you can. And that's been a wonderful chat with you tonight. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it. This has been season 3, episode 9 of Transition Stories. Say goodbye, Emma.
Goodbye, Emma.
And I should say goodbye, Phoebe.
I can't be the first person who's made that joke, surely.
No.
Big
Break
sorry.
made it on a weekly basis, if you remember.
I meant on the show, but there we go. Thank you for having me, Phoebe, and thank you to everyone watching.
It's been a pleasure. But yes, this has been season 3, episode 9 of Transition Stories, and my guest tonight has been Emma Smith. Transition Stories is a joint production of Phoebe J. Rose and Odd Tech Man. And until next time, live that one life, because you don't get a do-over.